Hey everyone. First of all, I want to congratulate you on getting to this point. I know it's been a really busy and hectic road through the summer. It's only 6 weeks long, so I understand, that it's a little bit of a challenge, but I appreciate that you hung in here this long. I also hope that you've learned a lot through the videos you've been watching and, even through the lectures that we do this way. Um, I would love to be doing this in person with you. But this is the way we're doing it now because of the COVID-19 crisis. So we'll make the best of it. And I hope that really one day I get to meet a lot of you in person, even if you just stop by my office and say hello, hopefully by next spring if we're back on campus. Um, so now we're in chapter 4. And chapter 4 deals with the legislative branch of our government. And when we say legislative branch, as you know, there are three major branches of the government, the executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive, of course, is the office of the president, or the presidency, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming chapter. And then, of course, the judiciary is the Supreme Court and also the federal courts below it. And then the legislative branch, which is really the first branch of government in the U.S. system. And inside the legislative branch, we call it Congress. And in Congress, there are two, uh, we call it a bicameral legislature, and bi means two. And there are two houses inside of Congress. There's the Senate and there's the House of Representatives. And I'm going to take you through a little bit about them and discuss some of the issues because right now Congress isn't doing very well, and its ratings are, if you were going to give them a grade collectively, they have been earning about an F minus. Uh, uh, and mostly because of the lack of cooperation and discussion within the Congress about how they get things done. Congress was put in place, basically in the structure of our Constitution to be first to be the lawmaking entity within the system. They write the laws that the president has to sign off and approve, and in that. They have a responsibility. That's why we, the citizens, elect them. As a matter of fact, I would say to you that when you think about it in this context, this is the way that we, the people, really have the ability to impact global and national politics is by the representatives that we elect to make decisions on our behalf. That's what a federal system does. That's what a representative system, or also known as a republic, that's what they do. We, the people, basically elect people to tell or talk on our behalf to the government. So a lot of people tend not to vote for their congressmen or women, or most of my students over the years, whether it's here at IBC or at UCLA or UCSD or even SDSU, where I've worked for many years, most of the students have no idea who their representatives are. In fact, I would say on average about 90 to 95% of the students have no idea. And this is pretty frightening in the context of understanding that those people are the people who really make decisions on your behalf. So if you don't know who they are, what they stand for, and I should say, preface that by saying, not just what they say, but what they've actually done. If you don't know that, then that you actually could be allowing people to represent you who don't really care about the things that matter to you. Now, in understanding that context, you must understand that their job as a congressman or woman is not to respond to just your individual needs. They have to just, respond to the collective need. And sometimes they have to do the right thing, even when because if we elect the right people, if they understand the necessities of their states and the responsibilities of the localities that they represent. So hopefully they're doing their job the way they should. Not all of them have. Sometimes power does corrupt, and that's why it's our job to check them to make sure that they're doing things to represent our interests. Now, if they're doing things that are contrary, or if you have people who have certain interests that are contrary to the national public good, then their job is to also be responsible and have the courage to do the right thing, even when their constituents think they're not. So it's important for us to understand their obligation and responsibility. Their job is to make everyone happy, but their job is to do their best to make sure that they represent and do the right thing for their individual states, but also for the federal system that we live in, our national government. Because remember, it's not just about you and it's not just about one state. It's about the collective union of our country. So keep that in mind when sometimes they don't meet your expectations. And then also be willing to challenge them when you know they're doing things that are contrary to the will of the general public. Um, but let me go through a little bit of the sort of the structure of this and sort of some of how the Congress sort of works. And as I said before, I'm not going to take you through all the PowerPoints, but I'm going to illustrate a few of them along the way just to discuss some of these things. I think that you'll find from the videos that I have put in for the discussion from Chapter 4 that you'll see enough of controversy regarding Congress' role, what they have and what they have not done. But also, you know, their failure, if they have an F minus, it's really a reflection on us because that means we haven't done our job to make sure that the people who sit in those seats represent our interest. So I would encourage you to, first of all, learn about who your congressmen and women are. As a matter of fact, I'll probably do that as an extra credit assignment for you so that you'll be able to, by the end of the class, you'll know who those people are, what their interests are, what they care about, and whether or not they're really representing your interests. And I think that's an important thing. So having said that, let's talk about some of the basics. Most of this you probably already know, but let me take you through a few items. So as you can see here on this chart, there are the two houses of Congress, the House of Representatives, which is on your left here, and the Senate, which is on your right. Now you can see in the House of Representatives, there are 2-year limits, terms, and you can be reelected over and over and over again. In the Senate, it's 6-year terms. So once you're in, you get 6 years to do whatever you want to do, hopefully right and hopefully not wrong. The minimum age here is 25, minimum age here is 30. That's an interesting notion. People ask me all the time, well, why are those ages what they are? And that's a very good question because I would argue that not that you shouldn't have to have some life experience to sit there, but I think once you're an adult, anybody should be able to run for Congress once you're an adult. So I don't think they should limit it to a certain age once you're legally an adult. Of course, the House of Representatives is based on population. So if you have a large state with a lot of people, that's what they call it the People's House because it's representative of the total population. And the Senate is based on equity. So there are 2 senators for every state. So approximately there are 100 senators. And so that's how the structure is within each house. The Senate tends to have more power than the House of Representatives. Some people think that's a good thing. Some people think it's a bad thing, particularly because for example, if you have a large state like California, then they have no more power than a state that has 5 people in it like South Dakota. Sorry, South Dakota. Maybe there might be 6 people, but 2 of them will be sitting in Congress and in the Senate. But that gives South Dakota the same amount of political power in the Senate that California has, even though California has a lot more people and a lot more money than South Dakota has. Some people say this is unfair, and there's some argument to that. And depending on where you live, probably would determine more of how fair or unfair it is. But this is what the framers of the Constitution put together. So the House has the power to impeach. However, the power to convict resides with the Senate. So just like in this last iteration, Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives, but the Senate, being Republican like the president, decided not to impeach him. So one initiates, but one has the final decision making. The House does not have the power to make treaties, but the Senate does by 2/3 majority. Presidential appointments do not reside in the House; they reside in the Senate. It's just a simple majority. So if you have 51 senators that approve, then it's done. As you can see here, based on population, there are 435 House of Reps people or representatives, and then there are 100 senators. There are 20 standing or permanent committees in the House, and there are 16 in the Senate. And in terms of when you have debates on issues on the House of Representatives, there are rules in terms of how long you can debate an issue on the floor of the House of Representatives. And on the Senate side, no, there are no rules, but they do have a filibuster, which means they can kind of block or stop debate when they need to call for a vote. Okay, let me continue on here just a second. Let me get to the next page. Okay, so when we talk about the structure of both the House and the Senate, it's all based on who wins and who loses, right? So, or who's the majority party and who's the minority party in the House and the Senate. So, for example, in the House of Representatives right now, the Democrats, or the more liberal side, control the House of Representatives, and the conservative side, the Republicans, control excuse me, let me back up. The House of Representatives is majority is Democrat, and in the Senate, the majority resides with the Republicans. But the structure inside each entity, uh, they both have a majority and a minority leader. So even though you're the minority within the House of Representatives, they have a leader who leads their party, even in the House of Representatives, as well as the Democrats have the same thing. There's a chairman. So in other words, what I'm saying is there's an infrastructure in terms of both political parties, both within the House and the Senate. And this is the administrative structure within both that helps drive legislation, or should help drive legislation forward. Of course, they have been failing miserably at this, and this is the part that's really frustrating to a lot of people. And many of you may not understand this, but for as a congressman or woman, meaning that they reside in either the House or the Senate, their responsibility are to their constituents, not to their political party first. And what we see time and time again is that the political parties doing things to serve the interests of their political parties, not the interests of the people. And that is never ever supposed to be the case. So when you see the lack of cooperation in both the House of Representatives and the Senate uh, over legislation that's built to help the public, then we the people have to be able to hold them accountable when they can't get things done that they know are going to benefit us simply because it'd be, for example, if the Democratic Party had an idea and they came up with it and the Republicans didn't like it because it was going to make them look bad or because they didn't think of it, they could just simply block it because they thought it because the Democrats thought of it, and the vice versa. The Republicans could have a good idea, decide to try and pass a law, and then it could be impeded by the Democrats. So then nothing gets done, but not because the bill, as it's called before it becomes a law, not because it's not good, but simply because the fact that the one group didn't like the fact that the other group thought of it. Um, a couple things here I'll point out real quickly. The majority and minority whips, and you see these both in the House and in the Senate. These are the people they're like the coaches of the Congress. Their job is to basically whip their people, meaning their representatives, into shape on issues, or keep them abreast of what's going on, challenge them when they're not getting stuff done. Their job is to be on top of folks, and so they're the people who whip people into shape. Of course, as you can see, there are other things here listed. The steering committees, their responsibilities are there to drive legislation. There's all types of campaign committees that are there because their job is to get reelected. So again, and the representatives have to do it every 2 years, which means that basically, as soon as they start, they have to start the process of trying to get reelected. And then on the other side, you've got the senators, who have a 6 year reprieve, but basically by 3 or 4 years out, they've got to raise enough money to get reelected. And so consequently, the problem that exists now in the House or Senate is the fact that it becomes a money game. That if you don't have a lot of money, no matter how good you are, how much you care about your community, or how much you want to be involved, unless you can get a large enough number of people to vote for you, there is no way to get a seat at the table inside of either house because it takes millions of dollars in donations to be able to run for office. So this is why the issue that we talk about frequently in my world, which are campaign finance reform, is a big issue because it's not allowing people who truly care about the issues to sometimes get a seat at the table to be able to sit and be a part of the national discussion. Um, and that's why we'd always discuss change to this end. Okay. Right now, we're in the 116th Congress, and you can see how the breakdown here, like in the House, there are 235 Democrats and 200 Republicans. In the Senate, there are 47 Democrats and 52 Republicans. This may change in November significantly. You can also see the breakdown by ethnicity too, so it'll show you kind of how many of who or what are inside of each house, inside in the House of Congress. So that's important to note, just so you have an idea of how diverse it is or is not within the House. Okay. approval ratings, as I said, are very low. So you can see the disapproval ratings are up in the 80 to 90 percentile. And even now, if we were to do this today, this is from 2018 or even higher. And again, this is due to the lack of cooperation between both houses and Congress. So it really is an issue and a big problem, the fact that things just don't get done. The reelection rates, though, no matter, here's the thing that's interesting, no matter how bad they are what they do, they continually get reelected. And then people go, well, how does that happen? And they say, well, it happens for a very easy reason, because people don't vote. And because if people don't vote for the representatives, then it leaves them vulnerable to the decisions that are made by those people who are charged to represent them. And this is what we see now that's happening, is that, in fact, these people, the reason people complain about them is one thing, but the fact that they're not doing anything about it is what the problem is. And so these people continue to live in their houses in Congress and get reelected, even though they may be horrible at what they do. So we, the people, have to do a much better job of challenging or holding them responsible when they're not doing what they should be doing. Okay. Um, this is how this again goes back, this is from more recently, but you can see the breakdown in terms of, where people sort of reside. And you can see here the millennials tend to be mostly Democrats. Gen X tend to be more Democrats, so are the baby boomers a little bit. So basically by age, you can see where the shift is. So you can see those that are basically probably 70, 75 and older tend to be more Republican. But they're also the ones who happen to vote the most, at least so far. And if the millennials decide to start voting more en masse and being more politically aware, uh, then that would probably change the dynamics of what the House of Congress looks like. Uh, but you would be hard pressed to understand why you would have the majority of people born after World War II all the way up to the millennials born in the early 2000s, with them being the majority of people. How in the world could they still not be in a position where the Democrats don't dominate? Well, it's because people don't vote, and that's the exact reason. Okay. Um, so we talked about some of this. So I'll just kind of walk you through a little bit of just in general. So the majority party, obviously, the person who has the majority seats in both houses of Congress. The Speaker of the House is the person who leads the House of Representatives. Uh, in the Senate, it's the Senate head is the Vice President of the United States. Uh, and then each party has a majority and a minority leader, which I illustrated to you earlier, who basically are the heads of their parties in both the House and the Senate. There are a variety of different committees within the House and the Senate. And again, the most important ones are those that are the permanent committees. Those are the ones that, regardless of issues, will always oversee all the other committees. Uh, so you can see here the various committees that are there: the House Rules Committee, the Select Committee, Joint Committee, Conference Committees, and it just basically lays out for you what their roles and responsibilities are. I'm not going to belabor them for you. I just want you to be able to know that they're there so you can review what their roles are. Congressional oversight. This is one of those things where, congressmen and women have the responsibility of overseeing the federal bureaucracy. So they have to make sure that all the various things that you'll get to see a little bit in the next chapter or two, you'll get a chance to see how vast the administrative structure to run this country really is. And each of the people who reside in Congress have a responsibility to be able to have oversight over those entities and organizations. So to make sure that they're effective and they're supposed to report back to the government how they're doing, especially because the government funds them. Uh, I've already talked about impeachment a little bit, so I won't go back there again. But again, the House can bring articles of impeachment against the officials in government, and then the Senate has to approve it. Uh, so even though, for example, Trump was basically found guilty, the Senate chose not to impeach him. Here's a process really that probably one of the things I'll leave you with, which talks about how a bill becomes a law. I told you earlier that a bill basically before a law becomes a law, it's called a bill, and when it's going through the process, it's always called a bill. And the process is basically the same for the House and the Senate. So I'll kind of go through it once, but to give you an idea. So a bill is introduced by either one or multiple people in Congress. Sometimes they can be jointly done. They can even be done across aisles. So if you could have a Republican and a Democrat that have a good idea about a bill that they decide to initiate, and they can move forward on that issue. Sorry about the plane going overhead. Let me stop for 1 second. Hey, what can I say? I like doing it all natural, so that's why I don't mind all the but this is how I am in class, so I just want to give it to you like I would give it to you in class. So I hope you appreciate the non-scripted version of my lectures here. I just wish I was here to get feedback from you. But feel free to, if you'd like to submit, a comment to me, feel free to do so. So anyhow, the bill is introduced by one or a group of people in say, the Senate, for example. Then it goes to one of the Senate committees or standing committees or permanent committees to be reviewed, and then it's referred out or sent out to one of the subcommittees. Sometimes they'll create a committee to deal with an issue. So, like during the affordable health care issue, the Congress, the Senate, and the House both created subcommittees to deal with the issue of. So they're basically looking at a specialized issue. So they create a temporary committee to look at it. And then they go back and decide, move it forward, and they vote on it by the full committee, decide if they're going to move it forward um, toward becoming a law. And so you can see the process as it follows a roadmap. So it's voted on, and then from the committee comes out with a report, and then it's put on the Senate calendar for vote. Or not for vote yet, but for reading. So they have to read basically what the issues are debated on the floor of the Senate as well as on the floor of the House of Representatives. Uh, and then the Senate votes. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So, if the Senate votes to approve a bill, um, then it goes to the president for signature. It's still a bill, even if the Senate does approve it. Uh, so, uh, so then it goes to the president. But the president has several choices of what he can do. He can either sign it, and then it becomes a law. He can veto it, meaning he doesn't agree with it. He can kick it back to the House or Senate, and they can go back and rework it if they want. Um, or they have what's called a pocket veto. And a pocket veto is an interesting thing, what we'll talk about later. But basically, it means that the president, in any last 10 days of a session of Congress, and Congress meets several times a year, so the last 10 days within that 10-day frame, the president can simply do nothing, and the bill will automatically become law. So if he, or I should say, let me back up the other way around and say it another way. If the president does nothing, if he doesn't do anything in the last 10 days, it will drop off and not become law. If he puts his hands in his pockets, then it's like we call it a pocket veto. He can put his hands in his pocket in the last 10 days of a legislative period, and it automatically drops off. And so the bill will not be signed into law. If he does that before that last 10 days, then it automatically becomes a law. So if it's 11 days out and the president decides to do nothing, then it becomes a law automatically, even without his signature. So it can work either way depending on the situation. But this is the process, and I just wanted you to be able to see it. It works similar for both the House and the Senate. So I just give you an illustrated example. Okay. And again, of course, there are some other things here. Real quickly, I'll cover particularly the legislative agenda. This basically sort of organizes what the priority is for the legislature in terms of issues or bills that are coming down the line. Uh, the filibuster is put in place to prevent delays on voting on a bill. So if they want to bring something to vote, they can stop people from debating it and call for it to be voted on, which can happen frequently in Congress. The cloture, which basically when somebody tries to stop a filibuster, is called a cloture. And basically, if that means somebody's on the Senate floor and they're just yakking, trying to delay a vote, as long as you get a 3/5 majority in the Senate, which effectively 60 votes, then you can basically override that person yakking and call for a vote. Of course, the vetoes, when the president can reject legislation. As I said before, pocket veto, if submitted within 10 days at the end of a session, he basically kills the bill without doing anything. Okay, I think I've covered enough about Congress for now, and I think I will leave the rest of it for you to be able to review. A couple of last things here. The one you're going to be watching on a video on earmarks. This is basically when legislative people try to basically, when a bill's going through process for Congress, right, and they're trying to get it signed, usually it works this way. And let me leave you with this thought so you understand how shady this gets. Let's say if I'm your senator and I'm trying to get a bill pushed through Congress, and let's say the value of that bill for whatever I'm trying to do is worth $1 million. Say it's going to cost $1 million to implement what I want to do. Well, let's say if it goes through, and say all of you are my representatives, and I need your vote to be able to get this passed. Well, let's say I come to you and say, you know what? Hey, I need you to help me get this bill passed, and I need your vote. And you say, sure, I'll vote for you, but I need something in my state too, and if you want me to sign it, I need to build this new facility, and it's going to cost $2 million. So now my $1 million plan is now a $3 million bill, right? And then I go to another person and I need their vote too, and I say the same thing. And they say, well, I'm glad to help you out also, but I also need $5 million to do what I need to do in my state. So now I'm looking at not 1 million, not 3 million. Now I'm looking at 8 million, right? So the idea is that by the time a bill gets down the road to become a law, it rarely does it ever look like it did at the beginning when I first initiated it. People will add on all the time. These are called earmarks, which and most of this is done under the table. And so what used to be a cheap, a relatively inexpensive bill could be maybe $100 million when it could have been $1 million because of all the people to get them to sign it. They won't sign it because it's the right thing to do. They will sign it when I give them something in return. And usually that means money for them, right? We also call this sometimes pork barrel legislation. This is basically when you basically do special favors, and basically they're paid for by the general public. So, for example, we all pay taxes into the federal system, but they take that money and then they divert it to a special project in a particular district or state, and without any oversight by us, the public. And so that's what pork barrel legislation is. As far as congressional districts, real quickly, I'll say about that every state is divided into a certain number of districts. So California, for example, is one of the largest. So we have about 54 districts in California across the entire state. And so that's why we have that same number of legislators in Congress. And when you total up all the states, every state has a different number based on the population. That's how we get to the number of 435. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm going to leave it there, and I will see you in chapter 5. Have a good one, guys.